in trouble navigating through this. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. I've got too many windows open. I'm sorry. So we've got a quorum. I don't see the agenda in front of me. We don't have the minutes, so we can just table the issue of reviewing and approving the prior minutes. I guess my hunch is, Byron, something involves a report from you.
Yeah, so what I'll cover is the market update as well as the financial status report. And the only other item was, I believe, was the previous minutes. So, but I'll get started on a market update.
Excuse me.
So,
Excuse me. Before we begin, can we call the meeting into order and do a roll call?
Sure.
Okay, our roll call. Chair G. Wade Booton.
Present.
Member Charles Brown. Member Hunter Thomas.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Okay, Byron, you have the floor.
all right. All right, just as it relates to the market, we've seen a year that contained a lot of historic events. We had a global pandemic, we had a contentious presidential election, we had a historic recession, we experienced some civil unrest, and then we've seen the market go from a bear market and then do a market rebound. But all of that had produced a lot of uncertainty and pretty much sums up 2020 in the overall markets and just the volatility that came with that. But despite that, there has been a strong start to the year. And this is judging it based on just equities, just as a general judgment of the market. But the story just changes week by week. So we can probably expect that uncertainty and some of that volatility to continue, as we progress through 2020. We're already seeing some investors become worried about lockdowns being further delayed or continuing, because we had these vaccine distributions that's falling short of expectations, and then we have these new strands that's being detected. So that story is evolving. The story is evolving locally. We've seen recent data that shows New Orleans homeowners are among the highest, and among other major U.S. cities where homeowners are at risk for foreclosure. So that's we've seen kind of expected that to be coming, but being at the top, it definitely was eye-opening. The most recent jobs data locally in New Orleans shows a 9.8 unemployment rate, which was in November. That's down from 11% in the prior month, but it's up from 4.6% from November of 2019. So, the unemployment rate, of course, is still high. President-elect Biden has brought some hope to that situation. He's recently announced a $1.9 trillion emergency relief plan. Hopefully that'll help steer us out of this pandemic and help mitigate this forthcoming crisis around the U.S. and in New Orleans, of course. And then, with the Democratic controlled Senate, hopefully that paves a way to kind of hopefully get a deal done and get it done quickly. The overall muni market started the year strong. There's good demand. There was light supply with new issues, but overall there was strong demand that's pretty much driven by the expectations of the fiscal relief that may come to state and local governments. We've seen mortgage rates kind of increase a little bit, given, setting a lot of record numbers last year, record lows. So we've seen that in the start of the year, mortgage rates kind of creep up a little bit. I think the idea there is, of course, is the stimulus and more relief coming. So we've seen refinancing actually spike up 20% last week compared to the previous week. So in general, just overall, a lot of things on the table that's making investors nervous, but, the spotlight is on Congress to get another deal done and then ultimately be able to distribute more of these vaccines so we can kind of get this economy back rolling. All right, so I will turn to the financial status report. Y'all still see my screen there?
Yes.
All right, great. So this is the financial status report as of November. Let me get this. And so what you'll see, this is overall the total revenues and expenses year to date. On the revenue side, we're at 171,000 actual to a budget of 191,000. So short, slightly missed by 20,000 on revenues. The
Byron,
expense.
can I interrupt real quickly? The view you had us, well, now I'm only seeing a small part of your screen. The view you had 30 seconds ago was spot on. I'm not sure what
Oh,
it's.
let's see.
It's kind of like somewhat. Well, there we go.
Yeah, now.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. All
Thanks.
right. So the there we go. So 171,000 actual to 191,000 budget. So slightly short by 20,000 on the expense side, 1.3 to a budget of 1.7. And so as we move to the second page here, this takes a look at our revenue. Our revenues, of course, it drills in. The driver here is the multifamily program income. We did close on 2 pilots in December, and the revenue from those 2 pilots is roughly $50,000. So we will see us exceed our budget on the multifamily income side on that line item, and actually we'll probably come close to our projected budget for the year. But we'll see that in our updated financial status report in our next meeting. Taking a look at expenses, the story, is the same as favorability. It's driven by the salaries and employees benefit line, the administrative expenses line, and then the marketing and advertising line. Favorability of 393,000 there. This shows our trending revenues and trending expenses. You'll see the revenues are all falling within average ranges. On the expense side, for November, there's an uptick there, and that's primarily related to just end of year invoices and contracts that needed to be paid. So that's more of a timing issue there.
Byron,
Byron,
I'm assuming that the insurance expenses, they all come due one time a year, or is that not a fair assumption?
Well, yes, they do. We have some. Are you referring to the pathways or just in?
No, I just saw there was a line item for insurance, and so just comparing it to whatever the budgeted amount is. And I mean, some organizations, I mean, the vast majority of the insurance comes up one time a year. And so you get a kind of a slug of expenses.
Yeah, you'll see. Yeah, there's a jump here in May where we get that big increase in.
I see. So it is spread out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. All right. Turning to the pathways portfolio, we have total revenues year to date of 164,000. We did sell the Dorchester property in November, so the gain on the sale there is what you see in the revenue line. The expense year to date is 36,000. The balance sheet.
Byron, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
So for the sale of that property, what the money, does it get placed into operating revenue, or like what bucket would it go into? I have no idea. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it goes into our pathways fund.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go into the general fund.
Okay. So you just have to recycle it then.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No problem at all. Balance sheet comparison. I mean, the balance sheet is fairly stable. Looking at it year over year, of course, with minimal activity. So nothing to stand out there. And then our cash position is 10.8, which is down slightly from previous month of 10.9. And basically within, our expected expenses is the driver there for that decrease. Any questions on the market report or the financial status report?
I don't have any. Hunter?
No questions here.
Hey, Byron, I just want to make one comment for the board members.
Sure.
Just to connect some dots on a strategic plan, the long-term strategic plan that we've been working on. Byron just talked about our cash position, and we talked about it last month at the board meeting. We've tried to keep it fairly stable over the last few years, considering the program revenues haven't, they haven't reached the levels that we expect them to reach over the next few years, and it's going to take some time. So this 10.8 million number you're looking at is something we keep an eye on, and we're also thinking about it from a fundraising perspective. So there are opportunities out there for us to get more capital in-house via grants, program-related investments. We're looking at lines of credit, low-cost lines of credit, other types of strategic investments that will help enhance our reserve position, and maybe even add to our reserves so that we can expand our reach. We can do more. And it simply comes down to how much capital we have to do it. So I just wanted to connect those dots to let you know that this is an important figure for us, and it's something that we're going to keep track of internally, and we'll continue to report back to you on the growth of this number.
Quick question, the pilot programs, Byron had said that there was a 50,000 of income revenue from that. As I recall, I'm not on the programs committee, but aren't there subsequent tranches of funds that flow under those pilots to us? I mean, it may be spread out over multiple years. Or am I just wrong?
No, you're absolutely correct. So there's an application fee. There's an initial pilot fee that's included in that 50,000 that I mentioned. And then there's just an ongoing annual pilot fee. In the case of these two pilots, I believe it'll be $5,000 annually, but escalating on a 2.5%, increase annually. So
you get
we'll
enough of
keep
these in
that
the
revenue.
pipeline, though, you start to generate additional revenues. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's Wade, the point there is building up that pipeline will take some time, building up the bond, building up our bond program, which was pretty robust at one point. As we rebuild it, there'll be a single family, multifamily, and infrastructure component to our bond program. So those things just take time to build. But once they build up, as you know, once we get that reserve to where it was before, and diversify it, then we'll be in a much more financially stable position and more sustainable, and actually build some public wealth so that we can start funneling through our community support fund.
Great, thanks. Byron, is that the completion of your two reports?
That's all I have. That is it.
So aside from if we can't put our hands on the last meetings, committee meetings minutes, we can always table it to next meeting.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on that right now, unfortunately. It doesn't look like they've come through just yet. So we may just have to postpone the approval of these minutes for the next committee meeting.
I don't think it matters.
If that meets your pleasure, we can do that.
Damien, can you think of, I don't think there's an urgency.
No,
No.
we can wait until next meeting.
Great. We're gonna adjourn the meeting. I think we've rolled through the entire agenda.
Well, one more thing before we drop off. During today's board meeting, we'll have a presentation from a group called Green Coast Enterprises. and they're a local developer slash green contracting company. But they're developing a project on Ferret Street, and they're developing it as a home ownership center that will have different components, different tenants, like a credit union, realtors, home buyer agency or home buyer counseling agencies. And they're actually looking at other city agencies too, but they've approached us about building out a satellite office in their building, in their property. And this satellite office for us would be a place for the community to fill out applications. You know, we could even have some of our staff be at that satellite location every now and then. We can have education programs for the community. You know, just a number of things we can do, but also there are other communities around the city where we need to do the same thing. So this would be a pilot or at least one opportunity for us to consider as we start to build out satellite locations around the city. So you'll see a presentation from that group during today's board meeting.
I assume it's like Fred Street, kind of between like Carrollton and the river somewhere. Do you have
It's
any idea?
Ferret and Napoleon is the other main street.
Okay, so it's in that go zone. I don't know if there's still bond money still available. For a while, that was it was getting the post Katrina development funds.
Sure.
That whole area was a go zone. That's a good
Okay.
area though. I mean, because there's the community in that area would be well served.
Yes, I agree. Yes, the building was most recently called the Public House,
Mhm.
and it was used as an entertainment venue, but it's now slated to become housing and office space and community space.
So
So
this will be like a mixed use arrangement then.
yes,
Nice.
and they're also approaching us for a pilot. That's not what they're here to talk about today. That's a separate issue, but they need to know whether or not we'd be interested in coming in because they're trying to get their letters of interest signed and get all of their financing in place so they can start construction on the project. So today's ask is about us building out a satellite operation in their property.
So there would be, so it's not a finance arrangement for us. It's actually, we're talking about actually some sort of financial contribution for, I guess, use of the space.
Well, we would be leasing space.
Okay.
I'm a tenant in this building. You know, it wouldn't be a full office space, but some carve out of lobby area or a few rooms where we would house information. Again, we could have events. We could put kiosks, computers or tablets in there so people can come in and fill out applications if they don't have the proper technology at home. That happens. A lot of people are using their phones, and sometimes they just want something bigger. You know, they want a tablet or a computer. So that's the idea. Again, it's raw, so we would have to continue developing, but they need to know in short order whether or not this is something we'd be interested in pursuing.
I mean, can I play devil's advocate for a second, which is, I'm just thinking historically, we have so many members of the community with whom we work with. So in some instances, I don't know, I'm trying to think historically, we'd have folks coming to like obviously our main office, and I guess maybe we would go to other collaborators, locations for free essentially. But you're talking about something more robust and sustained.
Well, I don't know if robust is an appropriate description. I think it can be stealth. I don't think we need to, put a bunch of money into it. But
Okay. Yeah, that was my concern too, is sinking too much money into like a lease arrangement or a sublease arrangement.
yeah, I think it would need to be something minimal but impactful and gave us a presence in the communities. But it's also something we need to do in other communities too. We discussed in previous meetings utilizing our housing portfolio, our housing innovation portfolio, as we build those demonstration sites, using one of those properties as a satellite office, as a demonstration home and as a satellite office. So we're still exploring that type of concept, and we need to look at other areas in the city too. So this is not the first and only opportunity we'll look at, but in any case, in any situation we get into, it probably needs to be done with efficiency in mind, and the most bang for our buck.
The only other wrinkle I can think of, just kind of brainstorming, is COVID mitigation, which is, if it's a place for folks to congregate, you'd want them to be able to congregate, in a safe way.
Yeah.
Of course, we know all the related issues.
Sure. Well, this is an open opportunity. The staff hasn't taken a position on it one way or another.
Mm.
We're just putting it before the board before we spend too much time on it. And I
Right.
think it's a good chance for us to test out the idea of having a satellite office, because we've talked about it in the past.
And you would just, what I'm wondering too is so if you proceeded, my hunch is we wouldn't have folks permanently stationed there. We would just rotate personnel there for, as appropriate, to reach out to the community.
Yeah, it'd be mainly mostly self-service. That'd be the idea. And then we would have
Okay, missed that.
there as needed. But
Okay.
the concept is that we could have self-service locations around the city.
And you think that the population served just doesn't have appropriate computers or internet access? Is that what you're talking about as far as like tablets or something?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a deep problem on the home ownership side.
Right.
That is an issue in the community in general. But as it relates to home ownership, I think it's more so about just having somewhere to go physically and being able to talk to someone. So a lot of people want to still have phone conversations, even though we direct them to the website.
Right.
So as they get deeper into the process, sometimes it just helps them look somebody in the eye and help them, walk them through the process.
Right.
So we would do that to the extent that self-service would help us to a certain point. Then we would have to have staff come in at some interval to just continue pushing people through the process so they can get from A to Z. But that would be the idea. It's just a place for someone to come physically and get what they need done in order to advance in the program. And you'll hear more about it, but in this particular, there's a credit union that is building out a unique model, or what for them is a unique model in terms of customer service. So it's supposed to be a building that's heavily trafficked because there are other services there.
Yeah.
All people are there handling business with their financial institution or housing agency or a realtor, whatever the case might be. They'd be able to stop in and do what they need to do at our center too.
And I think the area is pretty well accessible. there's reasonable free parking. There's multiple bus lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then it's not just about home ownership. I say that, but I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Wade and Hunter, the community support fund. So families that may not have access to the computers or the internet or the right tools, they are definitely candidates for a physical site or the need for a physical location. So it's a place where if you need rental assistance, for example, because you've been laid off COVID and maybe you don't have internet right now because you had to get rid of it. Well, then there's a place for you to come and fill out your application, talk to someone if necessary, and not have to come all the way downtown. Downtown is good for the core of our operations, but it's not necessarily good for community interaction. So we would use that location or any other location strategically, but it will be for all programs, not just the home ownership.
Right.
Fund too. I wanted to point that out.
With COVID and remote learning and education, from what I've heard, they're finding out that there's a fair size of the population that don't have appropriate computers or internet access to meaningfully participate in remote learning, which is kind of overlaps with partially what you're talking about.
Yes. So I'll leave it there because we still need to have, the staff needs to evaluate it. We need to figure out where it fits in strategically. So this is a starting point. If we like it, then we can figure it out from that point. But otherwise, we're going to continue to think about the concept of satellite locations around the city.
Yeah, I mean, my gut is trying to figure out, can you identify a space that would be quote unquote free or virtually free versus having to pay some sort of monies. It could be banks. But the problem is if it's banks, then it kind of limits perhaps some of the activity that might take place on that location or at that location. And then also, how where do you locate them around the city? I don't know.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Okay, well, if there's no other issues, I guess we can adjourn.
Can everyone see the screen? I have located the minutes from our.
Oh, yes. From September?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you. Have y'all had a chance to review these minutes?
No, if you could just scroll down though.
Okay.
I mean, it looks like there was really the only action item was receipt of the prior minutes. So it's pretty straightforward. Can you go to the top, please? Yeah, so it looks fine to me. I mean, I'm happy to make a motion to receive the minutes if Hunter is
Great.
willing to. Hunter, you willing to second it?
No problems here.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Byron and Damon, anything else before we adjourn?
Nothing
No,
on my,
that is it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll see you in about 20 minutes.
all right. Thank
Okay,
you.
take care.
All right, y'all.
Bye.